So I have to admit something right off the bat today. When I first picked up the document we were covering for this deep dive, I actually had to double check the date on it.
Oh, I totally understand why.
Yeah, because I thought maybe I was looking at a sci-fi screenplay or some futurist's wish list from the 1970s. But no, it is dated February 2026.
Right, it's current.
And honestly, it is kind of terrifying, but in a really good way.
Yeah.
So welcome to the deep dive, everyone.
It definitely wakes you up, doesn't it? We are just so used to hearing about interstellar travel as this, this far future concept, something for the 23rd century.
Like Star Trek, warp drives, cryosleep, massive generation ships, all of that.
Exactly. But this report, which is titled Review of Current Technological Pathways for Sending Robotic Probes to Alpha Centauri, it basically says, forget all of that. It claims we're at a technological tipping point right now, not in 100 years, now.
And for you listening, the mission we are talking about today is this core objective found in the report. They want to launch a robotic probe to Alpha Centauri, which is 4.37 light years away, have it take pictures of the stars and any planets there, and beam the data back.
And the kicker is the timeline. Usually when people talk about this, they say it'll take 1,000 years to get there.
Right.
This report says we can do the whole mission from launch to data return within a single human career. About 20 to 30 years total.
See, that was the aha moment for me. But I want to play devil's advocate for a second, because I read the part about TRL, the technology readiness levels.
Right, the NASA scale.
Yeah, and they are claiming most of this stuff is at TRL 5 or higher, which, for listeners who don't speak NASA, means the components have actually been built and tested in relevant environments. They exist. But how? We can barely get people to Mars.
It's a fair point.
Mars is right next door. How are we suddenly ready to go to another star?
Well, it comes down to identifying the bottleneck. The authors argue that reaching another star system is no longer a physics problem. We don't need to invent new laws of nature. It has transitioned entirely into an engineering problem.
A very, very difficult engineering problem.
Extremely difficult, but one that is solvable with hardware we understand. The report spends a lot of time explaining why we haven't done it yet, and it lays the blame squarely on the rocket equation.
The tyranny of the rocket equation. We talked about this before.
We have, yeah. If you want to go fast using conventional rockets, whether that's chemical ion or even nuclear thermal, you have to bring your fuel with you.
And fuel has mass.
Right. So to push that mass, you need more fuel. But that extra fuel adds more mass, which needs even more fuel. It is a vicious exponential curve. The report runs the numbers on this. Even with our absolute best theoretical nuclear rockets, you are topping out at maybe 0.01% the speed of light.
Which means?
Which means Alpha Centauri is over 400 years away.
Right. Which brings us to the time capsule problem. I love this concept. If you launch a probe today that takes 400 years to get there, by the time it arrives, technology on Earth will have advanced so much that we probably could have launched a faster one 100 years later that would just pass it along the way.
Exactly. It's the weight calculation. You're better off waiting. So the report discards rockets entirely. They say the only viable path to getting there in under 30 years is to cheat the rocket equation.
Meaning you leave the fuel at home.
You leave the fuel and the engine at home.
And this leads us to the laser-driven light sail concept. Specifically, they reference the breakthrough starshot approach. Now, I have heard of solar sails before, using the pressure of sunlight to slowly drift around the solar system. But this is on steroids.
It is the exact same principle. It's radiation pressure, but applied with absolute brute force. Instead of relying on the gentle push of the sun, you build a massive laser array on Earth and you blast the sail.
Let's dig into that brute force aspect, because the numbers in this report genuinely shock me. They are calling for a 100 gigawatt beam.
It is a staggering amount of power.
I actually looked it up while I was prepping for this. 100 gigawatts is the entire electrical grid capacity of a medium-sized country. And we are going to focus all of that into a single beam of light.
Well, not continuously. You wouldn't run it 24/7. You store that energy up. Think of filling a massive capacitor bank or a huge battery farm, and then you release it in a pulse. But yes, for the few minutes that the laser is firing, it would be the brightest thing in the known universe in that specific frequency.
And it is pointed at a sail that is, what the report says, 4 meters wide.
About 4 meters, yeah. Roughly the size of a large conference table. But the material is the real engineering marvel here. It's made of graphene-enhanced polyamide.
Okay, what does that mean in plain English?
It means it has to be incredibly reflective and incredibly thin, 10 micrometers thin, If it absorbs even a tiny fraction of that 100 gigawatts, it doesn't accelerate, it vaporizes.
It effectively melts instantly.
Right. It has to reflect nearly all the light, and it has to be light in weight. We are talking about a sail that is exceptionally fragile.
So you have this ghostly, whisper-thin sheet in orbit. You hit it with the power of 100 nuclear power plants. What happens to the probe?
Violence. Controlled violence. The acceleration is listed at 10,000 Gs. That is 10 kilometers per second squared.
Just for context for you listening, humans pass out at around 9 Gs.
Yeah, this would turn a human into a puddle instantly. But for a robotic probe, it is survivable if engineered right. This acceleration phase only lasts for about 3 minutes. In that tiny window, the probe goes from a standing start to 20% the speed of light.
20% the speed of light, that's 0.2 C.
Which is roughly 60,000 kilometers per second.
That is mind-bending. You're at the moon in just over a second. You pass Mars in, what, a few hours?
Less than that, depending on the planetary alignment. You are crossing the entire solar system in days, not years. And then the laser turns off, the push is over. The probe just coasts through the vacuum for the next 20 years.
But this speed creates a huge problem for the destination, doesn't it? The report is very clear on this. There are no brakes.
That is the trade-off. To stop, you would need another 100-gigawatt laser at Alpha Centauri to push against you. Or you would need to carry rockets to slow down, which brings us right back to the fuel mass problem. So, stopping is impossible. This is strictly a flyby mission.
It's a drive-by shooting, photographically speaking.
Exactly. You spend 20 years getting there, and you traverse the entire Alpha Centauri star system in a matter of hours.
Hours, after 20 years.
Yeah. You have maybe 10 or 20 minutes of prime time where you are close enough to the A and B binary stars, or potentially Proxima b, to get high-resolution data. Then you zoom past and head out into the deep dark forever.
So you better not have the lens cap on.
Absolutely not. You get one shot.
Which brings us to the spacecraft itself. We established that the sail is super light, but the probe attached to the report calls it a chipsat. This isn't Voyager. This isn't the size of a school bus. This is something else entirely.
This is where the Moore's Law aspect comes in. Because the sail has to be so light to reach 0.2 C, the payload has to be microscopic by spacecraft standards. The report sets a hard limit. The total mass of the spacecraft is 1 to 10 grams, and the payload itself is 2 to 3 grams.
A paperclip weighs a gram. We are sending a spacecraft the size of a paperclip.
It sounds completely absurd until you look at your smartphone. Strip away the heavy case, the glass screen, the bulky battery, the speakers. Look at just the logic board and the camera sensor itself. That is only a few grams.
So they just use phone parts.
Basically, the proposal relies on wafer-scale integration. Essentially, you don't build a spacecraft by screwing different parts together. You print the whole thing onto a single silicon wafer. The computer, the radio, the sensors, they are all etched into one solid block.
Okay, that actually makes a lot of sense for durability, too. No moving parts to snap off under 10,000 Gs of acceleration.
Exactly. It is entirely solid state.
But can a chip that small actually do science? Can it take a picture that's actually worth looking at?
The report lists the payload specs, and they are surprisingly robust for being 3 grams. It includes a 1-megapixel CMOS imager, which is basically a standard smartphone camera sensor. It has a UV Vise NIR spectrometer to analyze the chemical composition of the stars and planetary atmospheres. It even has a dust detector and a star tracker for navigation, and onboard AI and ASIC processors to run it all.
I mean, a 1-megapixel camera sounds a bit quaint. We're used to 50 megapixels on our phones now.
True, but remember the context here. We currently have 0 pixels of Alpha Centauri's planets. A 1-megapixel image of an alien world would be the most valuable photograph in human history.
Good point. But here's the thing that really stumped me in the report. Power. You are 4 light years from the sun. It is cold. It is dark. You can't exactly run a long extension cord. How does this chip not just freeze to death?
That was a major engineering challenge for the review group. They explicitly ruled out using an RTG, or radioactive thermal generator.
Why? Too dangerous.
Too heavy, mostly. But also, yes, avoid the regulatory headaches of launching nuclear material. So for the 20-year cruise, the chip is basically dead. It is in deep hibernation.
Just sleeping the whole trip.
Right. It's powered by tiny, thin film batteries, just enough to keep an internal clock ticking so it knows when to wake up.
And then what?
And then the wake-up call. As it approaches Alpha Centauri, the light from those stars gets brighter. The chip has primary thin film solar cells that harvest starlight. It wakes up, charges its capacitors using the light of the alien suns, and turns on the camera.
That is incredibly poetic. It is powered by the very star it is studying.
It is a very elegant solution. But then comes what the report considers the hardest part of the entire mission. You have taken the picture, now you have to send it back.
Right. You have a 1-watt laser on a tiny chip 4 light years away, trying to aim it at Earth.
The report calls this the pointing challenge. Think about it. The probe is dumb during the cruise phase. No active propulsion. It only uses these tiny microelectrostatic thrusters, basically tiny puffs of ions, just to twist and aim the camera and the laser.
And it has to hit Earth from 25 trillion miles away.
You are trying to hit a target that is orbiting the sun. With a 1064 nanometer laser, it is harder than trying to hit a dime in Tokyo with a laser pointer from New York.
Wow.
And the signal is so weak that by the time it reaches Earth, it is not even a continuous beam anymore. It is a scatter of individual photons.
So how do we even receive that? My Wi-Fi struggles across the house.
We need a massive telescope. The report states Earth needs a 30-meter telescope, similar to the ones being built in Chile or Mauna Kea right now, but standard sensors won't work. They need photon counting detectors.
Photon counting.
They literally count the photons one by one as they arrive. They catch the faint signal and say there is a photon from the probe, there is another one.
That sounds incredibly slow. What kind of data rate are we talking about?
It is slow. They estimate the downlink at somewhere between 10 kilobits and 1 megabit per second.
Oh man, that is worse than 1990s dial-up internet.
Much worse. It will take months to download the images from the brief flyby. And that is why they use heavy compression. The report mentions JPEG 2000 format. It's resilient. If you lose a few photons in transit, you don't want the whole image file to corrupt and become unreadable. You just want it to be slightly grainier.
I love the tension of that. Imagine humanity waiting for months, watching a progress bar as the first image of an alien planet slowly resolves, pixel by pixel.
It would bring the whole world to a standstill.
Let's transition to the elephant in the room, or rather, the elephant on the ground. The infrastructure. The spacecraft itself is cheap. The sail is cheap. But that massive laser.
The Starlight facility, that is the real hurdle. The report estimates the ground-based laser array needs to be about 10 kilometers wide.
10 kilometers? That is a city-sized laser grid.
It is. And the cost estimate for the facility is between $3 and $5 billion.
Honestly, that sounds remarkably low. We spent $10 billion on the James Webb Space Telescope. We spend way more than $5 billion on a single aircraft carrier. $5 billion for the first interstellar mission seems like a bargain.
Well, the total mission cost is estimated at 4.5 to 6 billion USD. The probes themselves are only 150 to 250 million. The cost of the laser is kept relatively low because of how they plan to build it. It is not one giant glass lens, it's a phased array.
Explain that a bit more.
Imagine millions of cheap, mass-produced fiber lasers, like the ones used in industrial welding, all arranged in a 10-kilometer grid.
But don't they have to fire perfectly in sync to push the sail?
They do, and that is the real technical nightmare. You have to sync their fuses so the light waves combine perfectly. It's called constructive interference. It creates that single coherent 100-gigawatt beam, and you have to do it shooting straight through the Earth's atmosphere.
And the atmosphere's a mess. It's turbulent. That's why stars twinkle when we look up.
Exactly. If the atmosphere distorts the beam even slightly, you lose that tight focus on the sail, and the probe doesn't accelerate. So this array needs advanced adaptive optics. It has to measure the turbulence in the air in real time and slightly adjust the timing of every single laser in the grid to cancel out the distortion.
Like noise-canceling headphones, but for light.
That is a perfect analogy, and it has to check and adjust thousands of times per second.
Okay, so let's say we pull it off. We build the 10-kilometer laser, we build the chip, we launch it. But space is full of junk. Dust, gas, micrometeorites. If you are moving at 20% the speed of light, what happens if you hit a tiny grain of interstellar dust?
Complete catastrophe. At 0.2 C, the kinetic energy is enormous. A tiny speck of dust hits with the force of a bomb. If it hits the main chip, the mission is over. The probe is vaporized.
So how do we stop that? Do they have tiny deflector shields?
You can't afford the mass for heavy shields. The report says they will put a thin protective coating on the sail, a sacrificial outer coating, and reinforce it with graphene. But that really only stops microscopic dust. For anything bigger, there is no defense.
So it's basically a suicide mission, just hoping you don't hit a pothole on the interstellar highway.
It is a numbers game. This is why the review group proposes the swarm strategy. You don't send just one probe.
Ah, I see.
Right. The launch cost is mostly just the electricity to run the ground laser. The probes themselves are cheap. So you send a swarm of about 100 identical chipsats.
Safety in numbers.
Yeah.
to handle the attrition.
Exactly. If you lose some probes to launch failures, and you lose dozens more to dust collisions during the 20-year cruise, you still have maybe 40 or 50 probes arriving at Alpha Centauri. It ensures statistical coverage of the target.
Okay, there's one other risk the report touches on, and it's not technical, it's political. We are talking about building a 100-gigawatt laser that shoots into the sky. That sounds suspiciously like a weapon.
It's a very valid safety and regulatory concern. The report notes this. If you pointed that beam at a satellite in orbit, you could toast it instantly.
I imagine aviation authorities in the UN might have some serious questions about a 10-kilometer laser gun. You'd need massive no-fly zones.
You would. But the authors addressed this by suggesting dual-use scenarios to make the investment more palatable and politically viable. They suggest the massive laser array could also be used for space debris removal.
Like a planetary janitor.
In a way, you turn the power way down, aim it at a dangerous piece of orbital junk, and just nudge it enough to alter its trajectory and deorbit it. Or it could be used for power beaming to satellites. It turns the facility from a scary laser weapon into a piece of critical global infrastructure.
That is a very smart pitch for funding. We aren't building a death ray, we are building a broom.
And a propulsion system. It makes the $5 billion price tag much easier to swallow for governments.
You know, thinking about this whole concept, summarizing everything we've talked about today, a 20-year flight driven by a massive ground laser, sending a swarm of gram-scale cameras to photograph our nearest neighbor. The thing that really sticks with me isn't just the speed, it's what happens after.
How do you mean?
Well, say we build the laser. We launch the swarm to Alpha Centauri, we turn the laser off, the facility just sits there on Earth.
Right. The main capital expenditure is done.
So why stop?
You wouldn't. And that is the hidden potential of this entire project. Once the Starlight facility exists, the marginal cost of another launch is literally just the electricity bill and a batch of cheap probes.
So we could launch a swarm every month?
Every week even. You launch a swarm to Alpha Centauri, then the Earth rotates, you re-aim the phased array, and you launch a swarm to Sirius, then to Epsilon Eridani, then to the TRAPPIST system.
It changes the fundamental nature of space exploration. We have always been explorers visiting one place, planting a flag or taking a sample, and then coming home. But this sounds more like we are building a scanner.
We transition from visiting space to scanning space. It is a beautiful way to frame it. We are creating a continuous data pipeline from across the galaxy.
Imagine that future for you listening. 30 years from now, you aren't waiting decades for the next big flagship mission to launch. We just have a constant stream of images trickling in from every star system within 20 light years, a daily feed of the galaxy on your phone.
It effectively makes humanity a multistellar species. Intellectually, if not physically, we would have eyes everywhere.
It is a breathtaking idea. And according to the source material, the biggest hurdle isn't physics anymore. It is just construction and funding. It is the will to write the check.
And the patience to wait 20 years for the first email to come back from Alpha Centauri.
Well, I for one hope we have that patience, because I really want to see those pictures. Thanks for walking us through this incredible report today.
My pleasure.
And thank you to everyone listening. Keep looking up, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep. Thank you for listening to today's podcast. Please feel free to click on the link in the description below to discover more podcasts.